What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and on today's episode we're going to take a look at what might be the best value GMT watch on the market, the Steinhart GMT-Ocean One 42mm Pepsi. Yes, it is an homage watch, based almost entirely on the Rolex GMT Master 2, and like I've said in the past, I am a fan of homage watches, but I know they're not for everyone. That said, if you are a fan of the design and in the market for a GMT timepiece, this is definitely one of the best options available at $500 and under. This video is sponsored by LensRentals.com, a rental service providing cameras, lenses, and accessories for photography and videography. This is being shot on a Canon EOS R and lens that was loaned to me by LensRentals.com. The service is an absolute no-brainer for photo and video professionals looking to rent equipment for projects as they come up. But for someone like me, it allows you to try out something new for a reasonable price before you commit thousands of dollars on a purchase. If you're interested in checking them out, go to LensRentals.com and use the discount code JBF15 to get 15% off the rental of a camera, lens, or anything else they offer. Alright guys, here we have it, the Steinhart GMT-Ocean One Pepsi in 42mm. Yes, to be clear, this is the 42mm size option of this watch. They also make the watch in a 39mm, but this is the slightly bigger size. Let's jump straight into the specifications about this watch, and then I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on the overall design, the construction, the quality, and all of the rest of it. Starting out with, we have a 42mm case diameter with 22mm lugs where the watch connects to the case here. We have an overall lug-to-lug length, or what I like to call a watch's wingspan, from one edge of the case to the other, coming in at 50mm. And then, of course, a thickness of right around 13mm. Overall, it's not the smallest watch on the market, but even on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it actually wears pretty well. Maybe a hair bigger than I might prefer, and I'd love to set this down side by side with the 39mm and really see which one is the perfect size for me, but to be honest, this one's not bad on my wrist. And of course, I'll do a wrist shot here in a little while and show it to you. Now, the overall features and specifications for this watch. Of course, 316L stainless steel case, and it's on a matching 316L Jubilee bracelet, which frankly is quite nice. Sapphire crystal, double AR coated on the underside or the interior of the crystal, and of course it does have that Cyclops date magnifier there. We do have a screw down crown and 300 meters of water resistance. The bezel on this is interesting. It's a 120 click unidirectional bezel with GMT insert in a red and blue Pepsi coloration. We'll talk a lot more about that bezel and the bezel insert here in a little bit. We have a black dial with applied markers and a stainless steel Mercedes style handset. The handset and the markers feature BG-W9 Lume, and I'll try to remember to bring in a Lume shot in a little bit as well. Overall, those are the basic specifications of this watch with the exception of the movement. An ETA, well, let's see, is it ETA or is it Sellita? It's actually a little curious because on the website it's listed as ETA 2893/SW330 Elabor. That's how it's listed on the Steinhart website. What I think that means is that they just use the movement that they can get their hands on at the time, and there's no guarantee that any particular example is going to have an ETA movement or a Sellita movement. That's what I think is going on, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think that I'm too far off base there if I had to guess. ETA has been making it more and more difficult for smaller brands to get a hold of and use their movements, and a lot of brands have been moving over to Sellita. But I'm sure at one point or another, they have used ETA movements in this watch, so that's probably why they list it that way on their website. The specs on either movement are basically identical. The Sellita is, of course, a clone of the original ETA movement. They're both 21 joule movements, automatic, with hand winding and hacking. They run at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and they have a 50-hour power reserve. That's your basic specifications on this watch. Let's drill in here a little bit closer and talk about some of the details. To begin with, let's talk about the case. And the case is probably where this watch deviates the most from being a true clone of something like the Rolex GMT Master 2, or a perfect homage of that watch. In profile, if you look at the case shape, it's really absolutely nothing like a Rolex Oyster case. It's not that this is a bad case design, but it is certainly quite a bit different. So yeah, I think some people are going to appreciate the fact that this isn't a straight up, quote unquote copy of the GMT Master 2, and the case does look quite a bit different. I find that this case shape isn't bad, but it's certainly not my favorite case shape, if I'm being honest. I think that how it lays on the wrist, because it doesn't really have much of a downward slope towards the lug end, is a little less than ideal on the wrist, but it's not though as if it's uncomfortable. Just, a data point, something that I wanted to mention about it. The overall fit and finish of the case is really well done. I mean, especially when we're talking about watches in this 500 plus or minus price point. Yeah, the case does feature crown guards protecting the screw-down crown, and of course the screw-down crown is nicely knurled, and of course it is signed with the Steinhart logo. Working with the crown, it's nice, good threaded action here. Bringing it out to the first hand-winding position lets you wind up the watch as necessary. Of course, we're already running here, but the overall texture or the knurling on the crown and the feedback you get from the movement is nice. I've seen watches in this price point that aren't done as well, so that is a plus or an upside about this watch. Now, I didn't want to jump into this quite yet, but since the crown is already out, let's talk about how you interface with the movement. And it's one of my first gripes about this watch. Obviously, we pointed out here, unscrewing the crown out to the first position lets you adjust, or should I say, hand wind the movement. If you want to adjust the movement, first of all, you can pull the crown out all the way to the second position, and now you can hack the movement and set the time as necessary. You'll notice that there is a red GMT hand here, and then your standard hour and minute hands, as well as a active running seconds hand. The way, let's call it a professional GMT watch, or in the case of the watch that this is based off of, the Rolex GMT Master watch, if you wanted to adjust the time, you would bring the watch out to the first position. And rotating the crown here would move your main hour hand, not the GMT hand. On this watch, moving the crown when it's in this position advances the GMT hand by an hour. And unfortunately, you can't advance it backwards. If you roll it back, you adjust the date, as you can see there. So it's a dual purpose position. I would prefer it if using the crown in this position adjusted the regular hour hand, and the GMT hand was tied to the main train of the drive system, if you will. Now, does it really matter one way or the other? I mean, I guess not ultimately, but here, let me reset this back to the 1000 position, and I'll explain why I would prefer it the other way. So here we have it set as per normal. It is 1011, and the GMT hand is pointing at the 1000 position, vis-a-vis how our bezel is set. I always want my GMT hand to be set to a known reference time, probably my home time, which might be, the eastern coast of the United States. And as I would travel, I would set my main hour hand to be my location time, or where I'm at. You can't do that here, and that's why I prefer the system that Rolex uses as opposed to this. As well, the crown here in this position adjusts the date, whereas with the Rolex system, you have to wind the hour around 2 revolutions to increment the date, because the hour hand goes forwards and backwards on that system. So in some ways, this is preferable. It's a better quick set on the date anyway, but less flexibility in terms of the timekeeping. Now, relative to how we operate this GMT hand, let's say you were going to just keep it in this configuration like I have it here, in such that basically the GMT hand is on your home time and the regular hands are on your home time, but you wanted to know, what time is it somewhere else. Well, I know for a fact that London is plus 5 hours from where I'm at, so I can use the bezel and click this over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, set the 5-hour position up at 12, and now I can see that it's 1512 in London, or 1012 home, so it would be, what would that be in London then, plus 5, that's 312 rather, 312 in London. So you can use this bezel to offset your time zone in order to tell an additional time if you wanted to. That said, there's a problem with this bezel, and it's a small gripe, but it's a 120 click unidirectional bezel. It's a dive bezel for all intents and purposes. And it would be nice if it was a 24 click bidirectional bezel. So this only spins one way, and it spins in clicks very similar to how you would use a dive watch bezel. Not ideal, but I mean, you can still use it. It's still functional. Just a little bit less convenient than a well thought out GMT watch, basically. And looking a little bit closer at the bezel, I mean, first of all, this is on loan from a friend and viewer of the channel. You can see he's got a little bit of a scratch on the insert of the bezel there. It's going to happen because the bezel insert is aluminum. Aluminum bezel inserts get scratched up. Just be prepared for that if you end up ever getting a watch with an aluminum bezel insert. You might have to replace it if you care about that, or live with the little dings and marks and whatnot. That said, the bezel assembly actually has really nice clicks, positive, very smooth, not too tight, not too loose. Actually, I'm quite impressed with the overall action of this bezel. I think it is, frankly, fantastic. As well as the texturing of the edge of the bezel. It is really nicely done. Very much in the same vein as a Rolex edge bezel. Bezel edge, I guess I should say. But yeah, it is. It's quite well done, and it's very nice. I'm very pleased with the overall functionality or quality of the construction of this bezel. Absolutely, it is outstanding. The colorations of the bezel insert, really well done. The blue is a very nice shade of blue. The red is a very nice deep shade of red. If we can get a little bit of extra light to shine in on there. Yeah, overall, the bezel is really well done. I just wish it was a 24-click bidirectional bezel instead of its current 120-click unidirectional. I think that would be ideal. But really, I can't complain too much about the bezel. The dial and handset on this watch, very nicely done as well. Applied markers and a stainless steel Mercedes style handset. The rest of the dial is black with printed logos, printed branding. And yeah, it's great, actually. Fantastic. Very nicely done. The GMT hand is highlighted in red, and at least to the naked eye, the overall quality of the painting is pretty darn good. There's also a highlight of red down at the bottom of the dial there on that branding text. The overall presentation is quite nice, and it's, you know, very much of, again, a Rolex homage style or motif, and I like it quite a bit. The date complication is not a problem in and of itself, but we have that Cyclops magnifier, and as you can see there, the magnifier does not magnify the date window nearly enough. It is less than ideal, and it's a complaint that I have with all Steinhart watches that I've reviewed. It's not good. Frankly, it's really not good. It's a shortcoming of Steinhart watches in general. It makes it look a little cheap, makes it look a little unfinished, unrefined. It makes it feel like the date complication, and by extension, that magnifier is a bit of an afterthought. That said, it's a small thing and I could overlook it. I would happily wear this watch, even with the Cyclops magnifier the way that it is. But compared to the way that Rolex does it, and frankly, compared to the way a lot of other brands do it that are just as affordable as this watch, it's not really all that good. As a quick comparison, here's my Rolex. It's of course a Submariner and not a GMT Master, but their Cyclopses are all the same. And you can see how much more magnification we get in the magnifier of the Rolex watch as it sits next to the Steinhart. Yeah, it's a big difference. And yeah, that really makes the Steinhart's date complication and the magnifier feel like it falls a little bit short by comparison. While we're on the subject of the dial, we'll talk about the Lume real quick. It is, as I had mentioned, BGW9, featured on both the handset and on the applied markers of the dial. It's good Lume. It's fairly well done. No complaints here. Honestly, I'm not much of a Lume guy, which I've said in the past. I don't really read my watches in the dark. I don't find that the Lume is, on any watch really, is bright enough, long enough for my relatively poor eyesight. You know, I'm not going to wake up in the middle of the night and try to read my watch. I'd have to put my glasses on, and you know, so it's not a huge factor for me. But there's a shot of the Lume if you're interested, and yeah, you can judge it based on the picture here. Next, we're going to take a look at this bracelet. Of course, we have nice solid end links and the Jubilee style bracelet. The Jubilee bracelet is Very nicely done, actually. The links are held in with screws as opposed to pins, which is an upside, and the bracelet is very comfortable on the wrist. Overall, I like it quite a bit. It tapers down from 22 millimeters at the lug side to 18 millimeters where it joins the clasp, and then of course the clasp jumps up to 20 millimeters in width. The clasp itself has the Steinhart logo on the fold-over safety latch. It does have a series of 4 micro adjust points, which is nice. I always like having more than less, and 4 is a good number. Probably the only downside with this clasp is that once you fold open the safety latch, it is a very tight friction lock clasp. It doesn't have push button deployment, and that would be nice if it did. The clasp swing arm is well done, stainless steel, machined, and then the clasp itself is also fairly nice, if not, a little bit on the basic side, but nothing really to complain about here, other than the fact that it is friction lock, which at this price point, frankly, I would expect something with push button dual trigger deployment. Not a big deal, but yeah, that would be a nice little upgrade to see on the clasp of this watch. While we're back here looking at it, you can see the case back with the little logo of the Poseidon guy riding the seahorse. It's a nice screw-down case back, and the decoration on the back is, well done, engraved, probably, I don't know, laser engraved, I'm not exactly sure, machined how they do it. But, there's the case back in case you're interested. So how is this watch on my 6 3/4 wrist? Well, like I said, it's a little bit bigger than I might prefer. In particular, when we talk about the overall lug-to-lug length or the watch's wingspan, you can see that it really comes up and tests the outermost limits of my wrist at 50 millimeters. But it is wearable. On my 6 3/4 wrist, I definitely could see myself pulling this off without too much of a problem. I would probably prefer, and I would very much like to see the 39 millimeter version of this watch. But yeah, I actually do like this one quite a bit. And if it were the only option available to me, I could definitely wear it without too much problem. So there we have the Steinhart GMT-Ocean One Pepsi in 42 millimeters. Overall, it's a watch that I actually really like quite a lot. Very much interested in homage watches. I think they're fun, affordable ways to get a taste of something that you might otherwise not be able to get your hands on. And this I think is one of the best options for a GMT watch at its price point, and especially if you're a fan of the Pepsi homage look, the motif, whatever you'd like to call it. Overall, yeah, definitely a fan of this watch, and I am very happy to have had the opportunity to check it out here and to bring it to review on YouTube. Alright guys, there you have it. My review of the Steinhart GMT-Ocean One 42mm Pepsi. Overall, it's a watch that I really like. Though, it's not perfect, but honestly, no watch is perfect. I do wish the GMT function worked more similar to the way the Rolex system is, allowing you to independently set the main hour hand instead of setting the GMT hand, and I do wish that the bezel was a standard 24-click bidirectional bezel. Those are little things though, and they don't greatly affect my opinion of the watch. Now regarding the size, it is a bit bigger than I might prefer, but luckily they do make a 39mm size, and I bet that one would be perfect for me. As for the Cyclops, I mean, what can I say? It is what it is. Steinhart does magnifiers really poorly. I've had the same complaint on every single one of their watches that I've reviewed. I don't know why they don't change it. Everyone has basically the same complaint as me. It would be nice if they fixed that. On the upside, it is a nice, good quality, and good looking watch. The basis of the design is of course on the GMT Master 2, so you'd expect that it is good looking. But that it's also good quality is never a given, and this one certainly is. For someone looking to add a GMT to their collection without breaking the bank, I definitely recommend checking out this watch, especially if you like the Pepsi motif and the Jubilee bracelet. Well, that'll do it for today's video. As always, thanks for tuning in, and thanks to LensRentals.com for sponsoring this video. Now, if you're interested in renting camera equipment or lenses, visit their site, and don't forget about the 15% discount code JBF15. With that, I'll wrap this one up, sign off, and say bye now.